In this culture clip, Erin Jewell explains the differences between engaged employees versus disengaged employees.
Talking about engagement, so an employee who's engaged, whether they are frontline, formal leader, informal leader, they are going to exhibit certain qualities. There's going to be that quality of trust that shows up in their environment and their world. So they are going to display behaviors and take actions to demonstrate that they trust leadership, that they trust their peers, that they trust themselves. Anything I talk about as it relates to behavior with leadership, if we're seeing anything in our team, it's usually a reflection of us somehow. So I just want to put that out there, and we can explore that further if it's relevant to the conversation. But we have trust. We also have this attitude of care fronting. And what do I mean by that? So we don't have somebody who's confrontational, but we have somebody who's comfortable with care fronting. So conflict exists in the workplace. So let me explain what I mean here. Conflict exists in the workplace. It's actually a very healthy and very normal part of any organizational culture. And there are three types of conflict usually at play. One is relationship, one is process, and one is task. Okay? So when somebody's engaged, you see them involved in conflict here and there in a way that's healthy. They're working through some type of conflict in a process or a task, or one of the more common forms of conflict, relationship conflict. You may see them having conversations with a coworker or a leader to try to navigate and find a way through those challenges, right? The other thing is you're going to see a lack of ambiguity with somebody who's engaged. They're going to have this attitude of commitment. They're going to be considered as kind of reliable. I mean, I want to be very careful with that word, but they're going to also be very results driven. So you're going to see them engaged and present during meetings. You're going to see them asking questions, not just making statements or even sharing ideas. They're going to display a certain curiosity. Curiosity is a really, really big one with that engaged employee. Are they asking questions? Another thing I'll share is that you've got that results-driven attitude. So there's growth happening, they're meeting their objectives, and then there's this advocacy. So there are things that they are passionate about, that they believe in, that they are bringing to the attention of their working environment, whether that's their leaders or so engaged employees. And it doesn't mean that somebody who's not speaking up all the time is not engaged. Okay, that's not where I'm going with this. But somebody who is engaged is in some form or fashion advocating with their behavior. So they're advocating for the things that they believe in with their behavior, and that can be verbal, it can be nonverbal, it can be material, which means how they set up for meetings or how they present themselves, things like that. So those are all qualities and characteristics of an engaged employee. So the disengaged employee, right off the bat, there's going to be a lack of trust. So you almost take all of the words and we flip them, right? So there's going to be a lack of trust. So this employee is going to question a lot of things. They are going to display behaviors that indicate they're not trusting, right? So they might hesitate to ask for help. They might hesitate to offer help. It might be that employee that is kind of, sort of just checking the boxes somehow. There's a lack of trust happening. They're not trusting in the process or in themselves enough. There's also this fear of conflict. So you're going to see with the disengaged employee, it could be a fear, or it could just be a desire, sort of an apathy, or almost like a resignation of sorts, like an attitude of resignation where it's like, there might be an opportunity to navigate through some challenges, but they're not doing it. They're not engaging in that. They're not engaging in the normal, healthy conflict that's taking place at work. There's going to be a lot more ambiguity with somebody who's disengaged, an employee. They're going to have a hard time making decisions. And remember, we're talking about this at all levels of the organization. So this can go all the way up to the top, right? So there's a lack of decisiveness and clear decision making. There's also an avoidance of accountability with somebody who's disengaged, an employee. So you're going to find that as things can and do come up, this individual is going to be likely to either place blame on others or not accept the blame themselves if they're not feeling engaged in the process or in the organizational culture. And then you're going to have somebody who's not results driven. They're going to not be meeting their MBOs, management by objectives, whatever they're called, KPIs. They're not going to be ticking the boxes and driving results. It's not going to be profitable. And generally, you're also going to see when you have a disengaged employee, it really does affect the other members in their space. So it could be on their team, it could be leadership. So you'll tend to see a change in morale as well.
If this culture clip helped you, hit that like button below, and we'll see you in the next clip.